Hey, friends, welcome back to the Invigorate podcast, where we discuss the realities of living with autoimmune diseases. And more importantly, we share tips, tools, and resources to empower your journey.
That's right. And we're going to be discussing especially how to get the most out of your medical appointments. It's amazing. The average time that providers spend with each patient continues to shrink year to year. So maximizing your time, particularly with your rheumatologist, is going to be more critical than ever.
With the amount of time that we get with our rheumatologist being so limited, and with how complex these diseases are, really making the most of that limited time can really make a big difference in coming up with an effective treatment plan for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll tell you how to effectively prep for your appointments. And I'd say don't worry, because this isn't a ton of work, but just a little bit upfront processing and thinking about what's been going on can make a big difference. And we'll also give you questions to consider both before and during your appointment,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can make sure you're fully understanding what your doctor's communicating, and that he understands your perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just how we communicate with our rheumatologists. I think a lesson I've learned for sure is how I talk about how I'm feeling and my symptoms differs greatly when I'm talking to my friends or coworkers versus how I need to be talking to my rheumatologist.
That's a lesson I learned the hard way, Karen. It took me some time to get there.
How so? How did you adjust your style?
Yeah, I think at the beginning it was just such a being sick and having to go to so many appointments. It just felt really traumatic and just really a sense of I can't believe this is happening. So I was really talking about what I was experiencing in my body the same way with everyone. And after time, I just realized like, oh, the rheumatologist is not my friend or my coworker. They literally do not have time to to hear me say, so it was nighttime, right? And this happened and that happened. I can't do that with them. And so it really took being frustrated that, you know, from what I was feeling was, oh, this person doesn't want to hear my story, to then now being like, okay, how can I best communicate effectively in the short period of time that I have? So really making sure that I studied my labs and was able to say like, oh, this, last time this number was high. I do remember that also this was hurting. I was going through this. So I wonder, are those things correlated? So I could ask questions that were at least like slightly educated and really get a good sense of it, and really studying up on the ways in which the medicines affect you on your day to day, and what works and what doesn't work, and really sort of asking the doctor for any sort of help beyond just the medicine, really thinking about lifestyle changes I could make to really optimize things. So in doing that, I saw the rapport greatly elevate. So that was a huge thing for me.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, it's just really important to just stick to the facts, because otherwise you're just gonna get so lost in the sauce of it.
So I do think it's a balancing act, because you want to like portray or relay how you're feeling in a way that it's affecting your daily life, but in a way that it's factual and time-based, so you can get through all of it. Especially since there are times when it's months between appointments.
Oh, come on, right? Exactly.
So
And just thinking, sorry, and just thinking about the ways that, depending on how many rheumatologists are in your area, it can take you forever to get that new patient appointment. The recurring appointments you can get like every 3 months, every 6 months, depending on what's going on with you. But if you're a new patient trying to see a rheumatologist for the first time, it can take you even up to a year before you're into that appointment. So just how you like use that time well is critical.
for sure. In the beginning, and then even now, like you said, I'm seeing my rheumatologist every 6
Mhm.
months. But especially with brain fog or not, just being
Real.
busy. It's like
Right.
I am having trouble remembering what happened a couple
Mhm.
days ago, much less a couple months ago.
Right. Oh my goodness. And so I think with stuff like that, it might be important for us to, do things that help us remember, like keeping a journal, keeping a daily log of like, I ate this and I had this sort of pain, and really going into those appointments with like specific questions like, this is how the pain started, this is what I was doing when I started feeling this pain, this is the type of pain I'm feeling, the pain is a 7 or the pain is a 4. It's been going on since last Tuesday. It has made me stop going to the gym, or it seems to be really bad right before I go to bed. And really asking about what can I do to sort of like manage the pain, and if they think the pain is related to any particular like potential symptoms, or any complications with the disease.
Yeah, I used to go into my appointments just flying by the seat of my pants. I'd walk in and be like, okay, this hurts. I got this random thing over here. Something else is happening about this. I'm not sure what's going on. And then my rheumatologist would be like, okay, let's start with one thing. When did it start?
Right,
How intense is it? Does it come and go? And
right.
just these specific questions. And I was like, um, and just guessing.
Of course, of course. You
And
know?
so I'm sure I was relaying both inaccurate information and vague information. So
Right.
thinking about it from my rheumatologist standpoint, I'm like, this
Mhm.
poor guy is trying to help me with a very complex disease.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah.
like, I'm not sure really what was happening when.
Come on. Exactly it. Yeah. And I think it's impossible for us to remember 90 days worth of feelings, right? Like who can I mean, maybe if you're just some sort of like brilliant, high functioning person who can remember, these are my breakfasts for the last 90 days, like, just off of memory. But I think for most of us, we're gonna need to write it down. Not maybe not every day. This is like normal, nothing new, but at least writing down those like particular highlights and lowlights for the doctor is gonna be helpful for us.
Yeah. I think especially in the beginning when these kind of diseases and how they affect each of us individually,
Hmm.
it's kind of it takes a while to get to know your body and
Yeah.
what's happening. So especially early on, just noting down when symptoms are getting better or worse,
Right.
because even sometimes in the absence of symptoms, that can give you clues into potential connections to triggers and whatnot.
Hmm. Yeah, certainly, certainly, certainly. Yeah, thinking about the ways in which we kind of just like fly through life and don't even think about like this thing is connected to that thing. And it's something as awful as it is to have to manage a disease, there seems to be such a potential gift in there of like slowing down and really paying attention to what we're putting in our body, what we're putting our body through, and how often we're getting rest. And all of these things, especially when your doctor wants to introduce like new medicines, and really try to find, as a good co-partner in this journey, really trying to find ways to say, how are we going to manage this disease best? It's important to say, you know what? This might have been a solution for someone else, but for me, it's making me miserable. And I think being able to articulate that and really advocate for yourself, big word, advocate for yourself, is critical.
And to that point, when you have tracked your symptoms and how you've been feeling, then you have a solid reference point or log of what's been going on. And
Hmm.
it makes it much easier to advocate for yourself in those situations so that you really have all the information and then you have time to process what you want to come out of the appointment
Hmm.
and what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's I can't emphasize this enough, Karen. Just the ways in which we can help ourselves and help the doctor help us. It's like the old joke I feel like I used to say as a school teacher: "Help me, help you." Right? Like how can you really be a good partner and not keep it a mystery, not be vague like what you were saying, because it really is not helpful for anyone. This isn't an episode of some sort of like medical drama where the doctors want to be pontificating and saying, I think I saw this case back in 97. Like, no, we really want to be able to get directly to it. And I think there's so many, especially I think about the like the sort of smart health industry that's emerged, where you have like your watches and rings and phones and all these sort of apps that can really help us really keep track of everything. I just had a doctor's appointment this morning with my primary care doctor, and when he asked me about like my blood pressure, I could look in my health app on my phone, and I could tell him my average blood pressure for the past year. Right. So like being able to just do that laborious thing of every time I took my blood pressure, whether it's at the doctor or at home, I wrote it down on my phone, and just being able to keep track of something like that. So I didn't have to do I guess it's been good. Like, I don't know what's good again. Like, I didn't want to have to do that. So being able to use what's available to us in terms of apps. I mean, these apps have like customizable features. They're able to track multiple symptoms, intensity levels of those symptoms, the duration. You can write additional notes. I've seen, for example, there's a Soldrin's tracker that's available now, rheumatoid arthritis tracker. I know Lupus Foundation of America has been talking about this app called Self. That seems to be very helpful. And these apps, many of them will track a variety of symptoms. So it's even if you're like, oh, that's not my autoimmune disease, a lot of these symptoms show up across the board for us, so they can be helpful regardless. So yeah, I'm just really amazed by the like smorgasbord, if you will, of apps available for us.
And one thing nice about the apps versus I started out using a medical journal,
Mm-hmm.
and that in itself was helpful. It helped me kind of slow down and really be thoughtful about what was happening every day.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I mean, it gets a little laborious. So I did end up using the Sogrins app for a
Okay.
few months,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was so helpful to track symptoms, diet, and other exercise and other lifestyles
Mm-hmm.
factors. And because of that, it was like I was able to really make the link between consuming dairy and the swelling,
Come
especially
on.
in my hands.
Right.
So, I mean, I love cheese probably more than anyone. But it made all the difference in
Yeah.
cutting that out, and I don't know that I would have discovered that if I wasn't tracking in an app or a journal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear that. I hear that. Even this, there's I think, what is it called? Like a single page tracker. This method you can use that like it just allows you to, even if you're someone who may be kind of shy when we talk about advocating for yourself, you can just hand this over to the healthcare provider that you're seeing, and say like, this is what's been going on, and they'll be able to sort of read it and use it to analyze and really get you to a point of a higher quality of life. You know.
With diseases that are chronic, having to, at least for me personally, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I don't want to keep tracking all this stuff.
Right.
But I think anything you can put down on paper to bring to that doctor's appointment is going to
Mhm.
be better than nothing. So I
Absolutely.
would, yeah, so I'd say don't get overwhelmed by trying to do an app every single day or write
Right.
in a journal every day. Whatever you can jot down at whatever time is going to be more helpful than not doing
Mhm.
anything. So don't stress about it. Just note it when you can.
Absolutely. And I think a huge obstacle in that, Karen, is so many of us, we kind of have this like sort of zero sum thinking. Like, either I have a streak of like 400 or I have zero. And like, it's okay. We can continue to just like pick up right from where you left off. It doesn't have to be something where you're like, I have to maintain this streak. I think this sort of a discipline will lend itself well to other areas of life. So if you're someone who's trying to get back into like being active, whether it's like going to the gym and working out moderately, if you have the mindset of like, I have to go, I mean, you shouldn't go every day if that's your mindset. But if you're like, I have to go 3 times a week, if I haven't gone 3 times a week, it's a bad week. If there's a week where you go once, just make sure you go again the next time you're scheduled to go. And if you go and you just kind of do a little bit, you're not doing your whole routine or regimen. Just make sure that you're in the act of doing it. So in the same way, if you're like, oh, I didn't write down everything, write down what you can remember, because once again, as Karen said, it's better to have something than to have absolutely nothing.
And then when you have that something and you're about to go into the appointment, just spend a few minutes, whatever, it doesn't matter how long, but just digesting that information and
Hmm.
reflecting on it.
Right.
Because then you can pull out the key pieces that you want to make sure that you get across or tell your rheumatologist.
Yeah. I love that advice because it reminds me that we're human beings, right? Like, you and I aren't just like going to just spit out a whole bunch of data. Like, we're not going to turn to like living Excel spreadsheets. Like, we need to be able to articulate it and humanize it, honestly. And I think, to your point, you can't really get to that point of humanizing if you haven't really sat and looked at the data that uh, you've recorded and reflected on how it's correlated with your own experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your earlier point, I think as you live longer with this disease and you have more time to research and understand your labs and the medication, that just having a better understanding from the medical side, coupled with the human side of it and the actual symptoms and how you're doing on a day to day basis, that all of that information, if we can make that succinct in that appointment, that's when you're really going to be able to have a solid conversation with your rheumatologist about what is the most appropriate treatment for your disease activity and the lifestyle you want
Hmm.
to live.
Yeah, that's well said. That's absolutely well said. Yeah, just thinking about what it means to really be a partner with your provider in this work. They are on your side, and if you have a provider that's not on your side, there are plenty of providers out there who will be on your side. So find the person that's going to work best as your teammate in this journey. And but using that, stretching or extending that metaphor of a teammate, it's important to get your game plan together, right? And I think once you have that game plan that you're working on by sharing the necessary information with your provider, that allows the experience to just elevate. So even when I think about that provider I had for my second flare, I went into it shell shocked, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I thought the worst of lupus was behind me after that first major flare." But with this second flare, I went into it so stunned I wasn't able to really advocate for myself. But over time, we were able to work together for, I want to say, about 4 years. Over time, I really built up a wonderful rapport with him where I was able to share the data. He knew my story so well. He was able to tie it back to previous experiences, and we were able to build. So it didn't have to be this like completely cold experience, and it wasn't just me hemming and hawing trying to remember exactly what happened and just giving anecdotes. But we found a beautiful harmony between both. So I can testify it's very possible.
You bring up a really good point, Chris, how you worked with him for 4+ years, longer
Hmm.
than that. But the one thing with autoimmune disease is we're in this for the long haul,
That's right. That
and
is
your
right.
your provider is too, and if they don't want to be your partner, like you said, find a new provider who does.
Exactly. Please.
But having that open dialogue and effective communication can really help build the trust between you and your doctor.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah, it's building trust takes time, and it takes vulnerability, and it takes really emphasizing and understanding communication. It's like any sort of relationship, but this is a critical relationship in our lives. It's making sure we get this right.
And being vulnerable is a key piece to all of this.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Especially, I mean, like we said, we're in this for the long haul. And on the last episode, I confessed to not being fully compliant on my medication at this point in time. But there can be like a sense of shame or guilt that,
Oh
ooh,
yeah.
I missed XYZ or I didn't do this or
Mhm.
whatever. I think it's really important to, like, as you're tracking and recording data, to
Mhm.
think of it as just that.
Right.
It's data. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be good, bad. We don't have to put a label on it.
No, no, no.
And then you can take that information, and that's just what it is, information,
Right.
and work with your doctor to come up with a plan for you.
Mhm.
So I remember at one point in time, I was so nauseous from all my medication
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that I literally couldn't keep it down. I would go
Yeah.
down and come back up.
Come right back up.
So my rheumatologist is like, well, you're not therapeutic if you can't keep it down.
Right.
But going into it was like, oh, I'm not taking my medication every day
Mhm.
because I'm having difficulty keeping it down. And some days it's like, I just don't want to throw up today, so I don't want to take it.
Reasonable response in my estimation. Like who would choose throwing up? I don't know. Not me.
Right.
Sounds terrible.
But then because I was honest about it, he
Right.
helped me figure out a different solution. We actually moved to a weekly injection, so I wasn't dealing with trying to swallow the
Mhm.
medication. So it
Mhm.
was more information, even though I felt guilty about not, like, being on track with it. It's like, no, we were able to adjust my treatment plan because I was open about it.
Yeah. And Karen, you say something that makes me think about, and this is why the humane aspect, the like interpersonal aspect of this journey is so important. Because if the doctor did not trust your experiences, where would you be? Like, what would it have been like? And some of our audience members probably know this all too well. If the doctor was like, "No, you're not being compliant. You just need to take it uh, um, orally versus the injection." I think that that's sort of like the nightmare experience that a lot of us have. Is like, I don't want to be viewed as non-compliant. I don't want someone to say that my experiences aren't valid. But that's an ugly part of the sort of like the history and why so many people are untrusting, is that that has and unfortunately in some cases still continues to happen to folks where their experiences aren't being believed, or there's a sense of like, no, I'm telling you this isn't working for me, and there's a sense of, well, I know it's supposed to work for you, so it's going to work for you. And I think that's where it gets tough.
For sure. And that's where I have to, it's that note or that point in time, if you feel discouraged and you're not getting what you need, cannot say enough to go get a second, third, fourth
Oh yeah,
opinion.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I had a great experience with my current rheumatologist, where one of the medicines I take, you have to, the way I was taking it prior to seeing him was I had to inject myself. And I told him about how I was sitting, um, like I remember I would do this medicine on Sunday evenings, and I would start a show on my phone, and I would, as the show started, I would like have the syringe in my leg for the injection, and the show would end. And it happened a couple of weeks where the show would end, and I hadn't pressed down yet, and was just like so. I didn't want to think of it as afraid, but clearly just afraid to do this to myself once again. And when I said it to the doctor, which for me took a lot of like working up of courage, once again feeling like how you're feeling about not wanting to be viewed as non-compliant or whatever. And the doctor was like, "Yeah, no, that happens. Sometimes people get like traumatized, so they develop a phobia because of it. We'll just move to the intravenous." And this thing that was so huge in my mind and manifesting itself in my body as a fear and as a an obstacle, my doctor was such a wonderful partner in terms of just saying like, yeah, we'll just do it this way. That's not a big deal at all. And I can't tell you, and if he, I guess if he ever listens to this, he'll know like how much it really like exponentially increased the trust I had in him, because we were,
Hmm.
new and working together. And I was like, oh, okay, this is my guy. I'm gonna be all right. I'm in good hands, and it immediately just made me feel so much more comfortable with everything else.
I think a lot of times you can feel like you don't have an option.
Right, right. Of course, of
So
course.
you just assume, okay, the doctor told me to take this needle
Right, right.
medication.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Doctor
have
orders.
I have to do it. But it's like, no, you don't have to do anything.
Right, 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 right. That's the
A-
truth.
And that's where having a conversation with them about like what you're up against, then they can oftentimes adjust, or
Right.
you guys can talk about other options. It's
Hmm.
not a one size fits all.
No, it's not a one size fits all. Particularly within I don't think it's one size fits all in medicine at large, but I think particularly within our corner of the neighborhood, the autoimmune side, this is like snowflake central, man. Like everything is different. Every single case is different. You can have 10 people who have the same diagnosis, and it manifests in 10 different ways. That's what I think is so fascinating about it.
Yeah. As we're talking about this and balancing the human side of things with the facts, I'm thinking about how I am now in my appointments. And I think I say the facts of like what I'm dealing with, but then how is it affecting my life?
Mhm.
Adding that human touch to it, or the human side of it. So then they understand me and my experience.
Right.
Is Do you have a similar approach, or how do you communicate with your rheumatologist now? You mentioned that you're more fact based.
Yeah. Yeah. Fact based. I come in with questions. Like sometimes I would just sit and think about something. Like I have another appointment coming up at the end of this month. I'm already thinking about questions for them. Um, and I like to really demonstrate a sense of bought in. And what I mean by that is I need to show that I'm paying attention to my lab reports. It's really important for me because I feel like, and maybe it's not true, but at least in my experience, it feels like when you do that, the doctor goes, "Oh, they're paying attention," and it just like the trust that we've talked about trust almost on a one-way street in terms of like we need to be able to trust the doctor. I think the doctor also needs to be able to trust us in terms of like our own competency and our own ability to say like, "Oh, this person actually wants to live well. They're not just doing the thing that's going to harm them and then expecting the doctor to be a miracle worker. They're invested in their own health." So for me, it's been really important to say, "Oh, I'm trying this. Like I've added this multivitamin, or I stopped eating this food, or I started working out X number of times." But also, I was noticing these numbers, like this level went up in our like last metabolic panel. What does that mean? And asking sort of questions to make sure I'm understanding it fully is really an important way for me to sort of extend that proverbial olive branch of saying we work together on this.
And when you have and I have a very basic understanding of the labs and the medications, but even just showing that small bit of initiative and asking questions, even if you don't fully understand it, just being engaged and wanting to understand it, I think can help show them too that you care and you're invested.
Right.
And
I think of it, as you were saying that, Karen, what came to my mind is like, it's like if you ran up on a famous musician, like if you ran up on like Beyonce or Taylor Swift, and everyone can say like the huge songs, like you could say like Bad Blood or Single Ladies or something like that. But if you're like, "Oh, I really love this deep cut, like track number 8 on your first album," something like real specific, or like, "Oh, when I heard you play at this small bar in Nashville, or this small place in Houston or something," I think that allows the musician to go like, "Oh, like you actually really care." And I feel like us being able to kind of like express our own chops with when it comes to the labs is the equivalent of understanding the rheumatologist deep cuts essentially.
I love that analogy because you do have to get into it if you want to be in remission and have it under control. It takes a level of investment and effort from your side. And when the provider sees that, oftentimes it's well received.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I've also found that when you're able to, level up that conversation, then you're able to have be more precipitory or participate more in your conversation with your rheumatologist
Right.
versus them just telling you, okay, I think you should do XYZ and you just have to take it. But when
Exactly.
you ask questions and are more engaged, then it can be more of a open dialogue and helping that partnership.
Hmm. Couldn't agree more. That's the
How do
truth.
you normally wrap up your appointments? How do you make sure that you got what you needed or wanted out of it?
Well, in my mind, I go in there with at least 3 questions, so I don't do too much. Because I think 5 questions feels like a lot. For me. So I try to say those 3 questions intermixed with some sort of just uh good banter. Remember something from the time before, and then say, "Oh, well, thanks. This has been very helpful. I think that's all my questions for now. But if anything comes up, I'll be sure to message you like through the app or something. Like my doctor's office has that sort of like app where you track all the appointments and the labs come through that whole deal. So I'll be sure to communicate something. And once in a while, not often, but once in a while, I will say, "Oh yeah, like as we were saying, I thought about this. Like, is that okay? Or like, oh man, like you know." This happened. This symptom showed up. Like, what does that mean? That sort of deal.
Are they the same three questions every time?
No, that would be terrible, I think. I feel like it's like if I just started reading them like as I asked you 3 months ago, you know. No, I try to come up with three new questions in the sense of just really paying attention to what's going on or particular goals I have. So oftentimes a question would be in relation to how like what do we need to do to get off of like X medicine, or what do we need to do um to reduce the blood pressure, or to increase the function of this organ, or whatever the case is. Just really thinking about it. I think to sum it all up, really thinking about it in a solution minded sense. You know, like is there a way? I would say all the questions really are under the umbrella of one question, which is what do I need to do to improve my quality of life? You know.
I love that.
Yeah.
'Cause that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
That's the only reason we're there. It's the only reason we're there. Yeah.
And you said it earlier, but one small note that I picked up on is you remember something from the previous appointment. So building that kind of banter and rapport
Mhm.
is critical. But then also just thanking them at the end of the appointment. Like,
Oh
thanks
yeah.
for your help. I think a lot of times it's maybe not a lot of times, but maybe it's just kind of taken for granted that they're there, they're getting paid to help us. And
Mhm.
sometimes we're not happy with the help they're trying to give us. And
That's true.
so I think just being appreciative that they're spending the time with you and working with you to try and raise your quality of life and just saying
100%.
thank you, I have found goes a long way.
Oh, it really does. Because people don't say it enough. So when you say it, it really sticks out.
Yeah.
Sad but
Especially in
true.
rheumatology when rheumatology gets a bad rep because they're
It does.
dealing with people with chronic illnesses who are sometimes in a lot of pain and
Yes.
not the happiest
No.
people.
No. 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 No.
So I think when you can show that ounce of gratitude and appreciation, it goes even further than it
Yeah.
normally would in that
True.
field.
It's the truth. Very true. Yeah. It's a tough gig. I respect it. I respect the person who wants to help us, but it's not easy.
Yeah, and unlike other conditions where it's like you see them for a finite period of
Right.
time and you're on your merry way.
Yeah.
Like my orthopedic specialists, I love all of them, but I don't ever see them.
No.
But it's like my rheumatologist is every 3 to 6 months. It's
That's
like
right. That's
that's
right.
a long-term relationship right there.
Years. Years. If you have 4 appointments, you've seen this person over years.
It's more than I see a lot of my friends.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. It's really that. It's really that. So yeah, you have to be in it for the long haul, and yeah, absolutely excellent point, Karen. That where other places like you hurt your ankle's better. There's an ending point. There's not necessarily an ending point for this. So yeah, just in my mind at least, like my rheumatologist lives right next to my barber in terms of someone I like want to be able to do life with for the next few decades. You know what I mean? Like
For sure.
real commitment, real commitment. Yeah.
I like how you brought up being solution oriented.
Mhm.
That's how I've shifted my approach from being, okay, we need to fix these things right now. But thinking longer term, it's like, well, I want to be able to do whatever hobby in my life, or
Mhm, mhm.
ski, run, walk, whatever,
Right.
insert hobby. And so by being able to kind of communicate your situation along with your goals, and I think sharing those goals, and then you can both work together to find solutions to help you live the way you want to live.
Mhm. That's the truth. That's the truth. Because everyone's goals aren't going to be the same thing. To your point when you talked about skiing, I remember one of the questions I had from my rheumatologist after my first severe flare, and mind you, I was 24 at the time, 23. I said simply to the doctor, "Yeah, so when can I play basketball again?" And this is maybe like a month out of the hospital. He's like, "It's gonna be some time before we're playing basketball again." I think I caught him off guard, but yeah, I just really that was my priority at the time because the whole summer before I was diagnosed, I played basketball with my students every day, and so I was a basketball coach, so it was a huge part of my life. So I was like, when am I going to be able to do this thing that's vital for me? You know?
Well, and that's, well, while you may have caught him off guard, it's very important that he
Oh yeah.
knew that's what you were going for.
Right, 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 right.
It's like, okay, we got to get this guy back on the basketball court.
Exactly, exactly.
Maybe a couple months or longer, but we'll get
Maybe
there.
longer. Right, right, exactly. Exactly it. That's the
That's
truth.
how I feel after, because talked about how many multiple surgeries I've had.
Yeah, yeah.
Eh, Yeah, so always communicating what I'm going to get back to.
Right. Right.
Like, what do I want to be doing that I'm not doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. So the phenomenal doctor was like, when can I downhill ski again? And this was after 2 knee replacements. And she's like, you're going to have to find a new hobby.
Oh, just close the door completely. Oh.
So, Chris, I shut that out. That's not an option.
Right, right. Second opinion automatically.
It's like, I refuse to accept that. And as I talk with physical therapists and other doctors, I
Mm.
actually learned that squatting and lunges, which I originally was told not ever to do,
Ever again. Yeah, yeah.
is one of the best things I can do
Okay.
because it builds muscle
Right,
around all your joints, and
right.
the muscle secures your joints.
Exactly.
So from there, it's like, well, after 2 knee replacements, it's like I was downhill skiing the next year.
Come on, you got back out there. Let's
Because
go.
it was my goal. I was like, I have to be able to ski with my 2 boys who are 6 and 8. It's like,
Right.
this has been a lifelong passion of
For
mine. I
sure.
have to get back out there. Now, it looks different. I'm definitely
Yeah, I get you.
not where I used to be.
Get you.
But that's not what it's about. It's about being out there outside, creating memories with my kids.
100%. 100%. Yeah, my basketball game pre-lupus and post-lupus are not the same. But you got to be able to enjoy your life, you know? I think
For
that's
sure.
it. You got to be able to enjoy your life.
Yeah. So I think, as we've mentioned, just communicating what you enjoy in life and what fulfills you. And if your rheumatologists or providers know that, they can help you get back there.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think that's really true. Absolutely.
So, as always, Chris, it is so good to talk to you. I
Oh,
appreciate your insights.
the feeling is mutual, and I want to thank you all so much for listening. And Please be sure, rate us on Spotify, Apple, anywhere and everywhere you listen to podcasts. But also, make sure you check out the episode info. We put a lot of sources in there, so make sure you check it out. Hopefully, it'll be helpful for you. But until next time, do take care.
Take care. Peace out, everyone.